Rousimar Christian Palhares is a Brazilian mixed martial artist. His nickname Toquinho, Portuguese for little tree stump, comes from his short, stocky, heavily muscled build. As he walks around at 200 pounds, 13 of his 16 wins have come by way of submission, with a notable concentration on leg submissions. He currently competes for World Series of Fighting, where he is the welterweight champion. He is often considered one of the best leglock specialists in all of MMA. Early life and education: Palhares grew up in abject poverty in the Brazilian countryside. He recalls working in the fields to help support his family as young as age 7 and said that there were times where there was not enough food for everyone. He eventually had to leave his shanty and move underneath a local bridge in a tent city slum. Palhares began training in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu at the age of 15, before moving to Rio de Janeiro to compete professionally. He claimed the Fury Fighting Championship Middleweight Championship in December 2007 after defeating Flavio Moura, Pan Am Jiu-Jitsu champion Fabio Nagao, and shootboxer's Daniel Ocasio in a tournament. Palhares earned his Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt under former UFC middleweight champion Murilo Bustamante and Bibio Dort. Experts in martial arts touted Palhares as one of the most naturally gifted grapplers today. Having spent his entire early career competing in Brazil, Palhares' first bout outside his home country was in the United States at UFC 84. He is considered to be one of the best in the world at leg locks, such as the heel hook and knee-bar. Palhares took second place in the under 88 kg 2011 ADCC, finishing his first 3 opponents quickly with leg locks, before losing to established world champion Andre Galvao in the final, by points. Career: Ultimate Fighting Championship, middleweight, at UFC 84, Palhares made his UFC debut in spectacular fashion, submitting UFC veteran Ivan Saliveri halfway through the first round. Palhares dominated Saliveri from the opening bell, grabbing Saliveri and taking him down into side control with a body lock seconds into the fight. From there Palhares transitioned into mount before taking Saliveri's back. As Saliveri tried to escape, Palhares switched to an armor and Saliveri quickly tapped out. He was awarded submission of the night honors. Palhares fought against former Pride middleweight and welterweight champion Dan Henderson at UFC 88. Henderson defeated Palhares by unanimous decision en route to handing Palhares his first loss in the UFC. Palhares quickly rebounded from the loss to defeat veteran Jeremy Horn at UFC 93 by unanimous decision. Palhares was expected to face Italian Alessio Sakura on December 5, 2009 at the Ultimate Fighter 10 finale, but due to an injury while training, Sakura had to withdraw. On December 12, 2009 at UFC 107, Palhares fought against Lucio Linhares and defeated Linhares by heel hook. At UFC 111, Palhares defeated Thomas Drwal by heel hook 45 seconds into the first round. He was, however, subsequently suspended for 90 days for continuing to crank the submission even after Drwal had tapped and referee Kevin Mulhall stepped in to stop the fight. He stated in a post-fight interview that he did not feel Drwal tap and kept applying pressure until the referee stepped in, and stated that he was sorry for hurting him. Palhares was expected to face Nate Marquardt on August 28, 2010 at UFC 118, however the bout was moved to September 15, 2010 to headline UFC Fight Night 22 after Alan Belcher was forced to pull out of his bout with Demian Maia with an eye injury. Marquardt defeated Palhares via first-round TKO. During the fight, Palhares claimed that Marquardt had greased his leg after failing to secure a leg lock on the ground. Marquardt attacked, catching Palhares off guard as he was complaining to the referee and won the fight through a ground-and-pound stoppage. Palhares would later apologize for his actions during the fight after it was determined by officials that Marquardt's leg was not greased. Palhares was expected to face Alexander Ferreira on March 3, 2011 at UFC Live, Sanchez vs. Kampmann. However, on January 18, Ferreira was dismissed from Shootbox, his home training camp, for a lack of commitment. Less than an hour later, it was reported that the fight had been cancelled due to Ferreira losing family and friends in the Brazilian floods, resulting in him being in no condition to train or fight. David Branch replaced Ferreira. Palhares defeated Branch via second-round submission. Palhares-Ferreira was expected to take place on August 27, 2011 at UFC 134. However, Ferreira was forced out of the bout with an injury and replaced by Dan Miller. Palhares would defeat Miller by unanimous decision, although there was some controversy when Palhares dropped Miller in the first round and after a few follow-up punches, thought the fight was over when it really wasn't. Palhares next faced Mike Masencio on January 14, 2012 at UFC 142. He defeated Masencio by heel hook in the first round, earning him his second submission of the night bonus. Palhares then faced Alan Belcher on May 5, 2012 at UFC on Fox 3. After getting the fight to the ground, Palhares was almost caught on a twister attempt by Belcher. Palhares was able to escape and proceeded to attempt various types of leglocks, which were all defended by Belcher. After some action, Palhares ended on his back, eventually succumbing to Belcher's ground and pound at 4:18 of the first round. Palhares was expected to replace an injured Luz Kane against Yushin Okami on August 11, 2012 at UFC 150. However, Palhares himself was injured and forced out of the bout. Palhares faced Hector Lombard on December 15, 2012 at UFC on FX6 where he lost via KO at 3:38 of round 1. Following his loss to Lombard, the UFC announced that Palhares tested positive for elevated testosterone levels in his post-fight drug test and, subsequently, has been suspended for 9 months retroactive to December 14. Dropped to welterweight and released from the UFC, following his loss to Lombard, Palhares stated that he would be moving down one weight class to the welterweight division. He made his debut in the new division against Mike Pierce on October 9, 2013 at UFC Fight Night 29. He won the fight via heel hook submission just 31 seconds into the first round. This was the only successful submission throughout the event. However, Palhares was denied a submission of the night bonus because he continued cranking the heel hook after the referee stepped in, an act UFC deemed unsportsmanlike conduct. It was also noted that Pierce tapped a total of 8 times to no response from Palhares. The next day, while conducting an interview with ESPN's Jeremy Sharp, UFC President Dana White announced that the UFC was releasing Palhares effective immediately due to not letting go of the submission. Hours later, UFC and Zuffa released a statement saying that Palhares was already in trouble for his failure to release his heel hook on DRWAL in 2010 and his drug suspension in 2012, and his actions the night before were the last straw. World Series of Fighting. In November 2013, Palhares signed a contract with World Series of Fighting, but is already on thin ice as WSOF President Ray Sefo gave Palhares a very stern warning about the in-cage conduct. Palhares made his WSOF debut at WSOF 9 against the reigning welterweight champion Steve Cowell. He won via inverted heel hook submission in the first round to win the WSOF welterweight championship. In July, he was scheduled to fight John Fitch at WSOF 11. However, on April 30, 2014, the match was cancelled. The fight with John Fitch has been rescheduled for WSOF 16 in December. Championships and accomplishments: Ultimate Fighting Championship, Submission of the Night. World Series of Fighting, WSOF Welterweight Championship. Mixed Martial Arts Record, Grappling Record. See also, List of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu practitioners, references. External links: Professional MMA record for Rousimar Palhares from Sherdog, official UFC profile.